Hello. We left off with the independence of the 13 colonies in North America resulted in Britain losing some of its oldest and most populous or populated colonies. So we're talking about the British Empire and how it rose to dominance. And that's what we are talking about. To give the backdrop, if you go and you watch the videos in order of the who, what, where, why, what for, when, reasons, this slavery thing, this whole camoose. How did this stuff happen, really? It's mind-boggling. So where did it come from? How did it all get going? So let's keep going here. You guys probably like, well, what is it? World history class? Well, kinda, but with regards to slavery, the slave trade. We gonna get, y'all gonna see. Just stay with me here if you want to. Or I'll be going live talking to myself. Alrighty. And I will be uploading videos, but I'm doing a succession of live ones for a reason. Okay. So bear with me, please. Okay. Britain's attention soon turned towards Asia, after they lost the largest and the most populous American 13 colonies. They turned towards Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. So if you was wondering how did all that come about, well, there you go. Study it on your own. After the defeat of France in the Napoleonic Wars, I've never known it as Napoleonic. I know Napoleon, but Napoleonic Wars between 1803 or 1803 and 1815. The British emerged as the principal naval, navy, naval, water, and imperial power of the 19th century. Even after losing their oldest and most populous colonies, they still emerged as the principal naval and imperial power of the 19th century. So that British Empire stuff didn't just disappear. And what you can do is, in this reference, you can see what's called Pax Britannica. That's P like puppy, A, X like X-ray, Pax. And then Britannica, like the Britannica. B like boy, or R-I-T like Tom, A-N like Nancy, N like Nancy, I-C-A. Pax Britannica. It meant British peace. I don't know who came up with these meanings and whatnot, but it's kind of almost seem like antonyms instead of synonym, opposites instead of like, but whatever. That's what it meant. British peace. Pax Britannica. Study that. Global head. Okay, let me see. I stopped there. I get you. British emerged as the principal naval and imperial power of the 19th century, and then I told you to see the Pax Britannica. British peace. Global hegemon. And a hegemon, the word hegemon, H-E-G-E-M-O-N, means the dominant state. So it became the global hegemon and adopted the role of global policeman. The principal naval and imperial power of the 19th century, the global hegemon, meaning the dominant state, and the role of global policeman. And then you can reference and look up the Industrial Revolution. The Great Exhibition in 1851. Study that. The country was described as, quote, the workshop of the world. This global hegemon, policeman, naval and imperial power, this empire was described as, quote, the workshop of the world, end quote. The British Empire expanded to include most of India. India. I didn't know. Just gonna be honest. I didn't know that. Comma, large parts of Africa. See, I used to wonder about that one now. And many other territories throughout the world. I wonder, the largest ever in history. Okay. Alongside the formal control that Britain exerted over its own colonies, its dominance of much of world trade meant that it effectively controlled the economies of many regions, such as Asia and Latin America. Boy, it just like seems like ain't nobody being left out. One way or another, you know? Sheesh. Oof. Okay. Coming into that time, there was a British government leader named Benjamin Disraeli. D like door, I-S like sock, R-A-E-L-I. Disraeli or Disraeli or whichever thing is silent. I guess it's Disraeli. Benjamin Disraeli initiated a period of imperial, relating to an empire. That's what empire is. Imperialistic. Imperial expansion in Egypt, comma, South Africa, comma, and elsewhere, comma. Well, I don't know how much is the and elsewhere, but that's what's in the research. So in elsewhere, we don't know how far and wide that was. It's saying elsewhere, comma, Canada, comma, Australia. I'm sorry, and elsewhere, period. I was going to say that's a period, not a comma. So each expansion, this British government leader, Disraeli, Benjamin Disraeli, expansion initiated a period of imperial expansion in Egypt, South Africa, and elsewhere, period. Now, Canada, comma, Australia, comma, and New Zealand became self-governing dominions. In case you were wondering, now you know. By the start of the 20th century, Germany and the US challenged Britain's economic lead. Now, here we go again with that. Challenging stuff. Challenge in, I don't know, it says challenged. They were the empire, huge, you know. But you know, one could say they were minding their own businesses, but Germany and the US, they had an issue with all it. So they challenged Britain's economic lead. Subsequent military and economic tensions between Britain and Germany were major causes of World War I. So if you never knew what caused World War I, there you go. Military and economic tensions between Britain and Germany were major causes of World War I, period. British had the largest territorial extent, but was strained militarily after World War I. In World War II, Britain's colonies in East and Southeast Asia were occupied by Japan. And I thought I knew world history. Really, I did. But I saw, I think it was a professor on YouTube the other day doing racial history that is and isn't taught in schools, making a comment about you can only learn what you are taught. So there you have it. If you're not taught it or told it, how are you supposed to know it? A crystal ball? So in World War II, Britain's colonies in East and Southeast Asia were occupied by Japan. Despite the final victory of Britain and its allies, damage to prestige and decline of the empire. So, hugeness of it all started to decline. For Britain, India, Britain's most valuable and populous possession. Okay, now the Americas was the most oldest and populated. Because I got confused when I got to this one. No, the American colony, the 13, when they got their independence, they were the oldest and most populated. But India was Britain's most valuable and populous possession. Valuable. Do your research as to why. Because at this moment, I don't have a clue. But India achieved independence, yay, as a part of a larger decolonization movement in which Britain granted independence to most of its territories of the empire. Well, the Suez Crisis confirmed. SUEZ crisis. So study the Suez Crisis. Confirmed Britain's decline as a global power, and the transfer of Hong Kong to China in 1997 marked for many the end of the British Empire. As an empire, as the global, humongous. The Suez Crisis, study that. Marked for many when the global power and as a global power and the transfer of Hong Kong to China in 1997 marked for many the end of the British Empire. Let's do a time check because that's a stopping point there. I guess I've got time here. So you get it? You get, when I say you get it, do you get the British Empire and why and how it grew as the largest in history and its connection to the America and the 13 colonies and indentured servitude and slavery and terminology and legality and then them being challenged and so forth and so on. That part of it. And then how the other parts of the world were involved one way or the other as challengers or being colonized or conquered or whatever. It's pretty big history there, world history stuff. But I wanted us to understand, where did the power come from to be able to harness, if you will, establish and hold on to a trade of humans? We get into the Atlantic slave trade, of humans, different culture, different colors, but still humans, for hundreds of years around the globe. You wonder, what kind of power could harness that? Afford it, get it. Well, there you go. "14 overseas territories remain under British sovereignty, and the 14 territories are Anguilla, Bermuda, British Antarctic Territory, British Indian Ocean Territory, British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Falkland Islands, Gibraltar, Montserrat, Pitcairn, Henderson, Ducie, and Ono Islands, St. Helena, Ascension, and Tristan da Cunha. Ascension Island, Tristan da Cunha, South Georgia, and South Sandwich Islands. Now I'm saying this part here. Is that where a sandwich came from? I mean, you just wonder stuff like, who thought of that? Maybe it didn't. Maybe a sandwich already existed, but if it didn't, the South Sandwich Islands, how did that turned into something that goes in between bread? Maybe, if that's the case. Sandwich Island. The sovereign base areas of Akrotiri, 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 and Dakila, Dhekelia, so Dhekelia or Dakila, and Turks and Caicos Islands. I can say that one because I would have liked to visit there. But that's the only vacation I've been on since the Mavericks, Dallas, Texas Mavericks won their first, and some people say they're only, but I don't believe that, championship. I was watching the game out of town at the beach on that day. Google that championship day, and that's the last time I've been on a vacation. I need a vacation, because that's not a vacation I'm pointing to. That's one little border things with some the little pictures of the beach. And I'm a beach bum. I really need a vacation. A lot of us do, I'm sure, at this point. Okay. Now you guys are probably like, really? I don't know about her or this or whatever, because I don't feel healed. All this power and empires and everything. What is the point? Where's the healing at? What about the slavery? What is all this here? Where is civil rights? What are we talking about? Well, I figured if we understood origin, pre-Atlantic slave trade, power, wealth, transfers of power, greatness of power, power of power and dominance, then we could come to understand the when, the who, the what, and the how in the heckity poo could the Atlantic slave trade of the African slaves, the humongous one of centuries, leaving descendants around the the globe, but especially the ports where the slaves were taken. So you have African descendants over Brazil and Cuba and, every which direction but loose. And so the power that could establish such and afford such and harness that, I figured we better understand who was and came and how came to power, and to get a better take on, Africa's a really huge continent. So you have to kind of think of, how on earth could this have happened? Well, so I'm checking the time because certain ways I want to stop and start, be fair. So we have 9 minutes. So I may chop this one up into 5. Because now we're getting ready to get really into the into. So, as I have it written here in my notes, now let's back up. You've been given a pretty big historical understanding. I'm always explaining stuff before I, look at my notes. A pretty big historical understanding of when and how Britain became involved in the Atlantic slave trade, and thus how Britain became the largest empire in history. But this is supposed to be a timeline of African slavery origins with regards to the Atlantic slave trade, so we have to get back to the 1700s. But first, let's finish up on the origin of the word slave. So we're done with all the empire stuff. Y'all get it in the things that were referenced, the time periods, wars, and different things. Study those. Look them up on your own. But we've got to finish with this. There's a little bit more on this origin of the word slave, because that word is a word, isn't it? Slave. It's not associated with anything nice, right? So you say the word slave, you got to really see where did it come from. Well, then we know the Slavs, those people that were conquered and captives, and then slave way yonder back in 13th and 14th century, way back yonder. And so really the origin kind of came from their group of people, because they were called Slavs. So just put an E on it and that turned into slave. But there were more older origins of the word slave. Late 14th century. Okay, we already did that one. Sclave or sclave, Sclave. We did medieval Latin, sclavus, Sclavus. From Byzantine Greek, sklabos, Sklabos. From Old Church Slavonic, 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 which was Slaveninu, Sloveninu, or Slaveninu. I'm thinking Slaveninu. Quote, a Slav. So what was a Slaveninu? From the Old Church Slavonic? A Slav. See, we back at the Slavs. See what I'm saying? Back at them. Probably suggests, and I didn't put probably there, that's in the research. Probably suggests the name originally identified a member of a speech community. Listen close to this part. Compare Old Church Slavonic Nemesi, quote, Germans, comma, related to Nemu. So you had Church Slavonic Nemesi, quote, Germans, comma, related to Nemu, Nemu, quote, dumb, like the word dumb. Now, I don't know if it meant dumb like we know dumb in modern times, like dumb, not so smart, but it says big dumb, D-U-M-B, end quote, comma. Really? Now, I hope it didn't mean the dumb that we know. That's not nice. Greek heterophones, quote, foreign. This is what it meant, a Greek heterophone. like a phone, heterophone, meant, quote, foreign, comma, literally of different voice. See there? In origin, literally of different voice. So, different people, different culture, different languages. You had the empire, and you had English speaking people and whatnot, uh, Spain and Portugal and whatnot. And you had the Africans and these different people. It literally meant foreign of different voice. See? It all came together. And Old English P-O-D, that was a word for it, P-O-D, P-E-O-D-E. So it was either P-O-D or P-O-D or P-O-D. It depends on what silent, which meant both race and language. Now, see, you didn't think that word was important, P-O-D or P-E-O-D-E, whatever. However it's pronounced, P-O-D. But the meaning of it is really important here when we're talking about origin and history of this whole slavery thingy. Predominantly the Atlantic slave trade, is what this is about. Where as a descendant of African slave, you talking about the us part of it, the here and the now, how we get here. PO'd from Old English meant race and language. Race and language. Now, in 1734, the slave trade is attested, and that meant declared. 1734, it was declared. It was on. It was declared. Attest means to declare that something exists or has come to exist. Okay, so slave trades in 1734. 1785. This is another one. 1785 in Gross's dictionary. It's spelled G-R-O-S-E apostrophe S. So I'm saying gross is like not like gross. Oh, that's gross. But unless it's grosses, but how we guess grosses and something is silent. So G-R-O-S-E apostrophe S dictionary. Let's do a time check because we're finishing out the origin of the word and its related words. And the clock's about to go off in 2 minutes. And this next one is one that is super important that we think on for a second. So we're going to stop this one. Video 4. I'm going to keep up with my numbers. And see you on video 5. It's not so great, but I mean, at least we're learning something together.